I'm David Ingram. You're watching Around the World with David Ingram out of my living room, and I'm going to have lived in this house for 40 years, another 2.5 weeks, and with 6 ex-wives, but that's a whole other story. My guest is Murray Morrison, who's brought along the secretary for did you, Murray, found the society, or was it a mutual thing of a bunch of people?
It's a bunch of people. It's a federally incorporated society, so it's in a sense Canada-wide, living out of my little office. So it was Cheryl and I and Dr. Sami and a mortician who happens to be my son. And
people are dying to meet him, too.
Well, it's a big expense.
Did I show you my hearse? I have a hearse in the
Yes,
back.
I've seen your hearse. I'm familiar with hearses. Don't forget, I was a mortician for 8 years.
I understand that,
so I know hearses. But death is a big expense, speaking of the elderly. And so some expertise, and there's no nepotism here because we're not making any money, some expertise in how to fund that from a person who lives it, I thought was a good idea. So we all did it jointly. We got together and drafted a constitution that said what we could do and what we couldn't do, and filed it in Ottawa, and boom, there you are. We exist. And since then, it's been, I think Cheryl will agree with me on that, a bit of a struggle to become operational, because we had the name, we had an office space, we had a couple of volunteers and some input from the board, and that was it. And so we're struggling. We've got a web developer on our board for obvious reasons. Cheryl is an officer. When I say secretary, that's the officer kind of secretary, not the, she doesn't do shorthand with a hoot type of secretary.
Oh, she'll sit on your knee.
No, she doesn't sit on my knee, and certainly not on video. But anyway, so here we are, just starting to get
You're just getting
the
this
breakout
sort of,
attention.
You're just making this happen.
Yeah.
How many organizations, and you've just done 2 in the last couple of days, so is this number 10 or number 50? Or
this is it. We've done 3.
Just getting started.
We've done 3 since Friday.
And some phone calls.
And some phone calls. And some, I volunteer my lawyer time to the society to help people out if I can in a sort of a legal jam. And one of the clients is an older fellow who I've only met by a phone, wonderful man. And I get to dance with the collectors, and I get to have fun. I love talking to collectors.
Well, there's nothing I like better than talking to collectors, too. Yeah. Do you remember, or was the blast ever part of your collection procedure?
The blast.
The blast.
I don't believe
but financial collection agencies telling stories at a tune. I mean, you sent out the letter from John Dunn. Of course, that was the Dunning letter.
Yes.
Every letter that went out, and I won't go into all. But the orders were that when you were calling Hilda for her $112 bill for the photographs that she had, the family photographs she had, to give a blast. And depending on the seriousness of it, the rules of financial collection agencies where you actually got up and stood on top of your desk like this with the phone in your hand. And to this day, I still use the blast when I'm talking to somebody from the IRS or from the CRA who is not, if you climb on top of your chair, on top of your desk, and talk down, that goes over the telephone lines. It absolutely does.
Let me get this straight. You climb up on top of your desk and holler at an IRS guy.
Not holler. I just talk to them.
I'm flabbergasted. There's an entire repertoire that I can now wrap around my persona. I love it.
Well, what
Except
happens
it's going to be tough getting up on top of the desk.
Okay, well, your chair's okay.
Okay.
You or a couch. I use a couch because then I can...
Step ladder work?
Yeah, step ladder would work.
Cool.
What you have to do is be high. You see, and you stand up. If you're sitting up behind your desk like this, you don't have the same timbre in your voice. You don't have the same deal. So if you want to deal with collection agencies, you have to be higher than they are.
I had the privilege of not being with a collection agency, but a department store, whose goal was to
Well, you were
retain the customer.
That's true, and I understand. And I'll
And
tell
the
you,
only time that there was somebody on the desk was when a mouse was in the office. And then, believe me,
then you all.
you have 100 ladies, and they're all on their desks.
But you understand the concept of what I'm trying to get at.
That's
you
it, yeah.
stand on top,
Yep.
and it is a persona that goes over. And I still use it to this day. Whenever I'm having to deal with authority that is being unreasonable, and you can, if you want to, you can make yourself smaller or larger over the phone.
Yeah.
And it's an indication, and people who use speakerphones, of course, have a superior, end up in some sort of automatic superior position in terms of the voice as well. It's an intriguing thing because you can just talk at them like that, right, as opposed to holding on in that crouched position.
I use a speakerphone all the time.
Yeah.
I won't use a handset. But, I understand the psychology, but I think the days in court standing, if I want to project, I don't need to get up on the desk. I just stand up and pretend I'm in court, and that seems to work.
Well, you understand the concept.
Yeah, I do.
But standing on top of your desk, and you would walk into financial collection agencies down at 532, what's the name of the street next to Granville, Seymour Street there, just down from the BC Telephone building there. And there'd be 7 guys standing on top of the desk, in their handset, yelling at people. And you'll be down. You're going to be here at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Bring your money, get your check, because they weren't trying to keep the client, right? They were just trying to collect the money.
Get the dough.
And do you know why it was that close to the BC
No,
Telephone?
this is Richard, because they got Richard Pitt. Richard Pitt is, I think I've told everybody, is the first person to provide commercial internet services in Canada. He and his partner Stuart Lynn with a company called Whimsy.com. Why was it next to the BC Tel building?
Because the rates for the lines were cheaper if it was within a quarter of a mile
of
the telephone exchange.
Of course, that's why
I love it.
That's why I had my when I had my telephone answering service too. I was just across the street from BC Tel here in North Vancouver. If you had your PBX and your expression, Richard used to install PBXs, so he knows all this stuff too. So all the telephone 444 Robson was a
555 Seymour was
all these offices right there. Were all the telephone exchanges were all right there. Anyway, making a long story short, so where the hell were we?
Well, I can tell you, I've learned a few things tonight. Blasting, yeah.
Blasting.
I've learned about blasting.
And you're telling me you do the same thing without recognizing what you're doing.
Without recognizing what I'm doing, yeah. So the psychology works, but I've learned the origin of the term Dunning letter. And I thought, what the heck? That's got to be some old English guy riding around in jackboots on a horse, So I have learned.
No, it was the financial collection. Well, I don't know whether it existed in another country or not, but financial collection agencies, the letter you got was from John Dunn. And it was...
Did John Dunn exist?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Certainly not in our office.
Okay.
But when somebody phoned up and asked for John Dunn, you knew exactly what it was, and there were, if I remember right, 3 different letters and 3 different things that gave you the level of collection.
Yeah.
Lots of fun.
Best who they asked for when they phoned.
Yeah.
So anybody took the phone call.
Lots of fun.
And these are the kind of things, and I'm going to digress for one more second.